Good morning, everyone. It's Ron. It's Saturday morning, and it is a cold morning. I got up this morning and I was Googling different places in the country looking at the weather, and I looked at Philly. And Philly was, I think about 4 o'clock this morning, it was about 18 degrees. And New York was the same thing, about 17, 18 degrees. And I got a friend in Nashville, and I Google looked at Nashville. Nashville was 6 degrees. And I thought, wow, 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 wow. I guess being in the mountains like that, I'm like, wow, everybody's cold this morning, at least most of the country anyway. So hope you guys are warm. Good morning. Uh, on last week, we again talked about feminine, masculine energy. I think the last thing we talked about was looking at the water when we looked at the 14th chapter of Matthew, trying to find some pull that together based on something Charles asked when Jesus was walking on water, and we were uh, looking at tying everything together from Genesis all the way to Revelation. Genesis talked about Genesis 1 and 2, speaking about the water and the Spirit of God being on the surface of the deep, and all the way to Revelations where it says there are no more seas. And so that's kind of spurred that conversation. And so any questions about anything you may have seen this week before we get started this morning, or to get us started this morning, better way of saying it. Questions or comments? Okay. Um, let's see. Pastor, did you have a question that you want to start off with this morning?
Not a question, but a discussion.
Okay.
If there aren't any questions. I want to preface it by saying that all of us have been taught that the Bible is a mystery. And if it's a mystery, that means what we read on the pages is not actually what's being said. And we have spoken several times about it being an allegory. And again, it being an allegory, it simply means that it is a story that tells a spiritual truth. So I want to, actually, I don't know where to begin, so I'll just talk through it. During the course of the week, something happened. I was walking through the house, and I heard deeply that a voice or an impression that said, or asked the question, did it really happen? And I started searching for the Exodus from Egypt. And what caused me to do that is I don't believe that the Exodus actually took place at all. Before you start hanging up, hear me out. The reason I don't believe it is because there is no archaeological proof of it. And if you read the results of the excavations that were done by quote unquote Bible archaeologists or biblical archaeologists, they try to force it, saying that it did happen, but they don't have any definitive proof. However, if you look at the results of archaeologists who have no dog in the fight, only thing they're looking for is proof that a group of people were there or whatever. And they can't find anything. Also, I found an account of a rabbi telling his congregation that it never took place. Now, the question, I suppose, is why is it that I don't believe that it took place? Number one, as I said, there is no historical record of it, neither is there any archaeological proof of it. But the thing that spoke to me the most is not that. The thing that spoke to me the most is when I looked at the word Egypt, and we've looked at it several times, and we talk about it means a cramped space, but there are other meanings to that as well. It talks about to siege, is stronghold or distress. So I ask myself, out of all of those meanings for Egypt, which one of them speaks to a nation? Which one of them speaks to a country? Which one of them speaks to a city? And then what came to my mind is I have never found the name of a bordered city in studying the kingdom of the Cushite. Hakupatah is the name that territory that is called Egypt. Hakupatah is it. Now, Hakupatah is not a city. It is a revered place. Hakupatah means the hill of Ptah, and Ptah is no different than Elohim. And it speaks to a place, no different than speaking of a place where, in our vernacular, where a church is. And it was considered, this area was considered to be not only the place of the gods, but also the place of the God. And it was also a burial ground, a cemetery. And the ones who were placed in this area to be buried were kings. And when I say kings, I'm talking about male and female, because in Africa, there was no difference between the two. Simply a ruler is what it was. And also the people who were considered the spiritual leadership, they were also buried there. And Imhotep was buried there. He was not an emperor. He was simply a man who understood physics and understood the body functions and a whole lot more. So with that said, why is this in the Bible if it did not take place? At the onset, I said that we've been taught that the Bible is a mystery. So this is a mystery to be unraveled. And when you're unraveling a mystery, you have to be guided by some source, whether that source is physical in terms of someone having hidden something and leave clues for you to find it. This is different. The clues to understand the scriptures, especially the Old Testament, are not written on paper. You can look at all the words you want to look at. If you do not have a desire, an unmitigated desire to understand for the express purpose of benefiting humanity, you will not get an understanding. If your paramount desire is to understand for the purpose of humanity's upward mobility, or for the purpose of humanity's unicity, then you will get understanding. And the understanding does not come all at once. However, it does come. It is my contention that the story about Egypt, as it is in the Bible, has nothing to do with a physical man named Moses, but it has everything to do with a spiritual personality that we are to emulate and have the same desires for humanity that Moses had. Questions or comments? No questions?
So what you're describing then, you're talking specifically about the Exodus, but I think that logic can, if you want to call it that, can be applied about the whole scriptures. Is that not true? I mean,
Well, yes, and I said earlier that the whole of the Old Testament, especially.
yeah.
Yeah. So it is true that the actions, whether it be the wall of Jericho, or whether it be the parting of the Red Sea, those things are excuse me, metaphors for a deeper meaning. And the deeper meanings does not come to academicians. Academicians can look at the words as we were doing at the onset of our journey. We were looking at the words and getting an understanding of the words, and we were putting we were gathering what we thought was a clear vision of what was being said. However, as we continued the journey, what we began to see was the spiritual journey guided us to understand spiritual things. And I do understand very well that there are those who are deeply bound by religion who will not embrace what's being said, but that's okay. I have no issues with that at all. The rabbi said that some of his people didn't accept it. And he said the same thing I'm saying. That's okay. It's all right. My responsibility is to show you what I have seen. And it is upon you to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to embrace it. However, I would say that I wish you would not reject it until you raise questions about it, so you can get some clarity for what you are rejecting if you choose to reject it. So that's why I ask, are there any questions before I move on? The next thing yes, go ahead.
Part of what we've said in the past is that the Bible is the story of us. And if it is the story of us meaning the spiritual entity that we are, then the journey has always been not an external one that you can see, but an internal one. An internal one, not internal in terms of the physical body, but internal in terms of our spiritually understanding who we are. So I can see what you're saying when you say it's not really, meaning it didn't really happen in a physical aspect, but spiritually, there are a number of times that we've had to come out of our own cramped tight spaces, our own ways of thinking, our own, all of the stuff that has served as weights upon us emotionally, mentally, but most importantly, spiritually.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Anyone else? When I look further into the kingdom of the Cushites, as large as that kingdom was, I did not see any divisions. For example, there are borders between South Carolina and North Carolina, but there were not borders in that kingdom. And the reason there were no borders is because no one owned the land. The idea of capitalism, communism, socialism, the idea of an economy is foreign to the African, is foreign to the Cushite, is foreign to the Twa. Why do I say that? Because those are European entities that were created for the express purpose of ownership, for the express purpose of control. In the kingdom of the Cushite, there was no need, there was no need for ownership. The land was communal. The kingdom was communal, meaning that everyone was taken care of. And in our minds, we probably are thinking about it must have been a barter system. No, at that point, it was not. When I grew up, you could go to your neighbor and get a cup of sugar or a stick of butter. Well, those things were not paid back, and there was nothing given in exchange for that cup of sugar. That's a system, that's a communal system of sharing. That's a communal system of making sure that everyone has what they need. So there was no need for the establishment of the kind of economic systems that we are familiar with now. And I do understand that it's very difficult to wrap your mind around a kingdom, especially that expansive, and it does not have an economic system. I understand that that is difficult. However, it is real. When you look at the efforts that have been put into making sure that the African is separated from Egypt, they're astronomical. Even the skulls that were excavated in Egypt, or the land that's called Egypt anyway, are said to be Indo-Asian, or they give them all kinds of names except African. When if you take the skulls that have been excavated in Egypt and compare them to the excavation of skulls anywhere in Africa, it doesn't matter whether it's East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, all of them are the same. But the denial is there because there cannot be anything of that nature attributed to an African. And even with that, if there is anything attributed to an African, then it has to be based upon something that was negative. The Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years, and this man Moses freed them. And everywhere you see a picture or a painting of Moses, he is not an African, he's a Caucasian. So the Caucasian had to free these Hebrews from Egypt. There was never an enslavement in Egypt, ever. There is no historical proof of that anywhere, that there was enslavement in Egypt. However, the Egyptologists have done everything they could to make that true, that there were slaves. The whole purpose for having Egyptologists is for them to nullify the reality that this area was occupied by Africans, and the technology that it took to redirect the Nile, the technology that it took to build the Pyramid of Giza, a pyramid that is so large, it has an effect on time. If you get close enough to the Pyramid of Giza, your watch, the time on your watch will change. That's how strong the energy is in those pyramids, especially the one at Giza. To have pyramids around the world are in alignment with each other. To have all of these holy places around the world that are in alignment with each other. This had to be somebody other than the African, according to the Caucasian. According to, the Caucasian. Because there's a difference between a Caucasian and a European, and we'll talk about that another day. So this could not be attributed to the African. Even understanding the planetary bodies, and sharing that understanding with other people around the world cannot be the Africans. So the Aztecs or the Mayans had to learn this on their own when there was clear evidence that the African was there who guided them in understanding the planetary bodies and other things about the universe. And I'll delve deeper into that in a moment. Ron?
You mentioned Egypt and making that distinction. When the first place Egypt is mentioned in scripture is in Genesis 12 is what I saw. And when you look that up, concordance is Strong's 47:14. And of course it says a son of Ham and descendants in the northwest part of Africa. But when you follow it down the rabbit hole, it talks about to be in defense. It talks about to be in a cramped space, of course. It talks about to be limited, to be the seizure or to be in an enclosure. But it goes on down to 6696, which means adversary. So can it be then that we have looked at this, we understood it to be an enclosure. We understood the cramped space part of it, but can it be saying then that this is the state of mind that you put yourself in when you're in a religious state, and you look and see that the adversarial place that you are is you? As Barb said, it's an internal journey. So seeing that all the circumstances that the African has been in from the time you were discussing that beginning until now, and looking at it from a religious perspective, it appears that the adversary is external when the adversary really is internal. It's you that are putting yourself in this position, and the limited thing, and even the difficulties we have sometimes in being mindful when we try to meditate is us putting ourselves in that cramped space. Is that what you're saying in a different way, I guess, than what I'm trying to say?
In a nutshell, what I'm saying is that we limit ourselves. We have limited ourselves. Egypt also means to limit yourself.
Yeah, to set limits. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have limited ourselves, and we've done that based upon the historical record that has been forged by Caucasians, by Europeans. We've done that by embracing a religion that was established for the purpose of controlling and enslaving people. We've done that by being educated in a Western with being educated by Western minds and having our thoughts to be manipulated by Western philosophies. To say that, let me give an example of how limited we are. In order for the pyramids to be constructed, there had to be an understanding. There had to be an understanding of hydraulics. And not only did it have to be an understanding of hydraulics, but that was taken into consideration too when the Nile was redirected to establish the Hill of Ptah. To this day, there are no machines that can lift the stones that built the pyramids. So in order for those pyramids to have been constructed the way they are, there had to be brilliant minds involved in getting it done. There had to be brilliant minds to bring into existence an understanding of the human body to the extent that there was herbs put together for medicine to heal, and there was music played to heal also. To understand the vibrations of the universe, that took divine minds to understand that. To have a flying machine during the time of, and I use the term Egypt loosely now since we understand what we're talking about, that area. I use it simply to speak to an area. To have flying machines during that period had to, it speaks to having a brilliant mind. And I can go on and on about the accomplishments that were done there, and to organize a society that is orderly, that is crime-free, or to organize a society that goes thousands of miles, and to be able to harness enough energy to build structures to benefit that society, to establish libraries, to have libraries so large until it took weeks, if not months, for Alexander to burn the books. That speaks volumes about the mindset of the people who lived in this area. The limitation that we have is that we don't use probably 2% of our intellectual capacity or our ability to think and to analyze. It is said that Einstein, or any other genius for that matter, only uses 10% of their mind. So our limitations came when we were invaded by Europeans, and when we were taken into captivity and enslaved. Why do I say that? Because even though the minds were brilliant, there was no thought of invading anyone. There was no thought of putting anyone in captivity. So there were no armies, there were no weapons. So it was easy for us to be placed in captivity and enslaved. And by virtue of there not being any armies, that spoke volumes also to the mindset of the people who occupied those areas, the people who were in this kingdom. So we have limited ourselves. And what we are doing now is opening ourselves up. What we've done, we understand that the majority of our body is water, 97%, some say 98, I don't know, but it's in the 90s. And that means that there's only 2% left or 3% left for the minerals that our body is made from. So suppose for a moment that this amount of water that makes up our body is there to remind us that we are 98% or 97% spirit, and the rest is earthly. The limitation came when our vision changed, when we allowed the third eye to close and the eyes to open, and when we allowed ourselves to interact physically with the things around us rather than to understand them, we became more in tune with those physical things that are around us, especially when it came to ownership. And we could see physical things, but we couldn't see ourselves. And through the centuries, since then, since the occupations, we have devolved rather to a place where we have limited ourselves in terms of our thoughts, in terms of our desires. Now, let me hasten to say this. The reason it is called a Kushite kingdom is not because the Kushites named it that. It was named the Kushite kingdom because of the people who came from the outside, and they simply called it a black kingdom. The people who occupied the area were the Twa. And so when we talk about the kingdom itself, it was an African kingdom occupied by a people who called themselves Twa. And these names began to change after the invasion of Northern Africa. And the push came when the Europeans began to push deeper into Eastern Africa and began to come westward in Africa. That's when the different quote unquote tribes came into existence. That's when the languages started to change. However, you can find in whether it's in the Congo or Nigeria, you can find the same types of worship, the same ornaments that's used in worship as you would find in the Kushite kingdom. Why? Because these are the same people who was pushed out of that area, and they left for the purpose of survival. And they did not, they meaning the people who were the original people of Akabalon, Africa, did not put boundaries around their lands and call them states, like countries, like Ghana, like the Congo, like Nigeria, like Tanzania, like South Africa. These are not names that were given to different bodies of land by the children of Akabalon. Europeans did this, and they did it for the express purpose of creating division and allowing them to have an easier task at controlling the people and stealing everything they could from them. Question, comment? Am I clear with you guys?
Yes,
Is this clear?
it is clear.
Thank you. I said that there is a difference between a Caucasian and a European. The difference between a Caucasian and European, and I have written about this, I just have not sent it out, but I've written about this. If the African is a concept in terms of mindset, and the European is the same in terms of mindset, then if we are not looking at the external presentation, meaning the external body, the external color of the skin, we're talking about concepts, then that means that anyone can be an African and anyone can be a European. When our mindset is such that we are in league with what's happening, in league with Israel, or in league with the European nations who are committing genocide against the Palestinians, it doesn't matter what color your skin is, your mindset is European. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So you are European. Tim Scott is a European. It's not about the color of his skin. It's about his mindset. When you are genocidal in your thoughts and your actions, when you have no empathy for life itself, you're European. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. If you are a Caucasian and you have empathy and you are searching for ways in your heart for this to be changed, or for the genocide to end, if you are one who is filled with love and kindness, then you're African. If you're one who is in search of the spiritual essence of our creation, you're African. If you are a proponent of religion and you will die on that hill of religion, you are a Caucasian. You're a European, rather. Am I making sense? Any questions about this? Comments?
I still am a little fuzzy on the difference between the European, who has genocidal thoughts and actions and enslavement kinds of actions. So are you saying the Caucasian is the middle ground, where it has the propensity to be a European, depending on how it allows its mind to develop, or to be African, depending on how it allows its mind to develop?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Caucasian does not speak of ethnicity. European does. Caucasian speaks to the color of a skin, as does African. It speaks to the color of a skin, but it also speaks to a mindset. The mindset, every one of us are Twa, because all of us came from the same place. If we are the ones who are to lead or guide humanity to a place of harmony, then we have to have a mindset that came out of a Kabbalah. And that is a mindset of compassion, love, and kindness. A mindset that believes that the natural resources belong to everyone. A mindset that believes that poverty should not exist. A mindset that believes that billionaires should not exist at the expense of people starving to death. Greed, thievery, the robbery of natural resources. African didn't do that. That's not an African mindset. That's a European mindset. And it doesn't have to be a Caucasian mindset, because that Caucasian mindset could be just as African as the African mindset is. Does that make sense, Barbara?
Yes.
Thank you. So we are at a place in our journey where we have an opportunity afforded to us that I have never seen afforded to anyone in the history of this world. We are Moses in the house of Pharaoh. And as being Moses in the house of Pharaoh, we learned the scriptures. We did not learn what they mean, but we learned the scriptures. We held to the Bible. We have learned the ways of Pharaoh. And all of this is metaphorical, of course. And in learning the ways, we have left that place of limitation. We're not limited by religion anymore. We're not limited by racism anymore. We're not limited by greed. We're not limited by material desires that overshadows anything in our lives. Our priority is not materialism anymore. Our priority is humanity. And when priority is humanity, empathy is a huge part of that. But even larger, or just as large rather, as empathy is forgiveness. The reason it's difficult for Caucasians to understand when the Africans say, I forgive you, the question becomes, how can you do that so quickly, especially with the 9 people who were killed in Charleston? How can you forgive someone who did this? That is because of that Caucasian has a European mindset. And to that person whose ethnicity is African, that person who has a problem understanding or saying, I can't forgive you, or I can't forgive you because of what you did, and I'll never let this go. That is a European mindset. So even though they're not a Caucasian, the mindset is European. And our efforts, our desires, our journey, our purpose, our obligation is to dispense with the European mindset and embrace the African mindset. And that's a mindset that embraces everyone. It doesn't matter where you hail from. We embrace all of that. You have to, because all of us came from the same womb. Some of us went astray, and it is incumbent upon those who did not go astray, those who found their way, those who learned who they are, those who embrace who they are. It is incumbent upon them to become the guiding force, to become the light that leads out of the wilderness of darkness and confusion. It is imperative that we understand this, because that's where we are now. We are at a place where we not only are being shown what the scriptures mean, or the reason for them having been written, we're not only being shown how to unravel the mysteries of the scriptures, but we are also being shown the effects of unraveling the mysteries of the scripture, how it affects humanity, how powerful it is for the whole of humanity. When we look at it from this, look at the society from this place, it looks totally different. When we look at society and see that the Caucasian is different than the European, or can be different than the European rather, and the African also can be European based on mindset. When we look at it from this perspective, there is no room for racism in us. There is no space for hatred in us. There is no space for negativity as it relates to anyone in us. The main thing in us that gets us started is forgiveness, regardless of what's happened and happening. Forgiveness has to be the tip of the spear. And when forgiveness is the tip of the spear, empathy also becomes a part of that. And with empathy, we embrace that mindset and make every effort to help it to see that it is lingering in a space of confusion, but it doesn't have to. It is lingering in a space that is destructive to humanity, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, because the Creator has brought into this space people who are willing to enlighten humanity, regardless of the cost, regardless of how long it takes. That's who we are. So how is it that a Caucasian can free itself from the European mindset? The Caucasian does not have any, European does not have any religion that it has ever established, which means that the European sees no value in spirituality. When the European begins to embrace, when the Caucasian rather begins to embrace the reality of spirituality, that is the first step towards being freed from a European mindset. And the embracing of forgiveness, the embracing of the reality that we all are one. That's a part of the journey that removes or that changes the mindset, that transforms the mind. That is the essence of the energy that it takes to do that, and the energy has to be strong. When we ask the Caucasian, would you want to take my place? Would you change places with me? If I were to give you $10 billion and all you have to do is change places with me, not in terms of how I think, but my skin color, would you do it? I have never met one who said yes. That's the mindset that has to be changed. The reason that you don't get a yes is because consciously or subconsciously, in them, there is something that tells them that the lowest thing you can be is an African. That the lowest thing you can be is one who has black skin. And the most important and the strongest thing you can be is one who has white skin, because white is superior. That is a conscious or subconscious belief. And that subconscious or conscious belief has to be dealt with, has to be brought to the surface if it's subconscious, and there must be a desire to deal with it. And that desire to deal with it brings about forgiveness and empathy. If that desire does not exist in the European mindset or the European psyche, then the European will not in any way be able to embrace empathy or to become loving kindness and have mercy. That mindset must change. Nobody's trying to change the color of the skin. The reason the question is asked is to provoke a thought and to push you to a place to ask yourself why you don't want to have dark skin. And if you know that you don't want to have black skin, then you know what racism is, and you know that you're a racist. And that has to be dealt with. Am I saying that everyone is a racist? I'm saying that everyone has racist tendencies. You cannot be educated in America and not be a racist. And the most despicable thing that can be said, well, one of the most despicable things that can be said to an African is, you playing the race card. How do you know? If you have a European mindset, you don't know that. And if you have black skin and you say you're playing the race card, then that means that you have embraced a European mindset above the mindset that you were created to have. You have embraced that mindset for a reason, for a purpose. You want power, you want money, and the worst thing is you want acceptance. Why do you want acceptance with a mindset that has no problem with the genocide of Native Americans? How is it that you can embrace that mindset knowing that the African could be hung or the African could be skinned alive simply because it was somebody else's whim, or because the African fought to be free? Knowing that that Nat Turner was considered a murderer and a terrorist, but the people who enslaved him and killed any African they chose to was not a murderer. That's a European mindset that has to be altered. And there are people who look like me, whose skin is black, who think that way. So mindsets does not have a color preference. Mindset is determined by the person who has the mind. You determine what your mindset is. You determine whether or not you want it to change. That's up to you. Have we been effective in dispensing the energy that's necessary for those changes? Yes, we have. We saw it when George Floyd was murdered. What did we see? We saw more Caucasian young people marching than we have ever seen because of the murder of George Floyd. We saw that. We have seen a major shift in how people view the Jews in Israel. Semitic, I'm sorry, the Jews, the young Jews in this country have risen up against what's taking place in Gaza. We have put the energy out there in the macro for this mindset to change. There has never been a period in this engagement, these wars against the Palestinians, that people did not take the side of Israel. And we are taught that. We've been indoctrinated with that through the scriptures because they are God's chosen people. That's not what the Bible means. That's not even what it says, matter of fact, because there is no such thing as a Jew, just like there is no such thing as an Egypt. There is no such thing as a Jew. It is nowhere in the scriptures at all. You will not find it in the scriptures. You will find a corruption of Judah that's made to be Jew, but Judah simply means praise. It doesn't have anything in it that will lead you to believe that it is talking about a Jew, because God is no respecter of person. The reason the Creator said that Israel was his chosen is because he's saying, or it is saying, that those who are embracing the reality of spirituality, those who seek to know who they are from a spiritual perspective and embrace it, those are the ones who are chosen. That's what the Creator is saying. But the question becomes this: why are they chosen? Why were they chosen? They were not chosen because they were better than anyone. They were not chosen because they were closer to God than anyone. They were chosen for the express purpose of showing humanity who it is. But they were chosen by the express purpose to teach what they have been shown about spirituality. This idea of being chosen has been misrepresented because of a European mindset. The objective of the minimum amount of people on earth, the smallest group of people on earth, the objective is to continuously divide and conquer. And the division, anything that is supposed to be superior is, they are Caucasians or they are Europeans. Anything that's not is left to us. So the whole world has been taught to have a mindset that tells them that the Africans are dangerous. They are criminals. They have problem processing. They think less, and their thoughts rather are not even worthy of considering. That's what the world has been taught. Yet, the truth of the matter is, if it were not for the African mindset, there would be no doctors, medication, there would be no cars, there would be no refrigerators, there would be no cell phones, there would be no laser surgery. None of those things would take place if it were not for the African mindset. And there's a whole lot more to that. There would not be even blood transfusions if the African mindset was not there. So, in conclusion, unless there are questions, I'm simply saying that we have to take another look at the scriptures, and we must not view them with our eyes. We must view them with our eye. Yes, you will read them. You will read the words on the page. But I promise you that the words on the page are a veil that covers the understanding of the mystery of those words. The words are containers that holds the key to understanding who we are. It was well spoken when Barbara said, the Bible is about us. It is. We've talked about that forever and a day. It's the truth. It's about us. And it's time for us to make this a decision about whether or not we are truly committed to this journey. A true commitment to this journey does not carry the baggage of hatred and racism and greed and all those other things with it. So the decision about your dedication is not up to me. It doesn't come from me. Neither does it come from anyone who is on this line or who have ever been on it, to be honest with you. It comes from you. It comes from you. You have to be one with yourself before you can be one with humanity. Anything that sets boundaries and separates humans from each other is not spirituality. It's not an African mindset. It's a European mindset. And it doesn't matter, again, what the color of your skin is. You can be European because of your mindset. Questions or comments?
I have a question. Kind of take us somewhere, I guess. And we don't talk about Paul a lot, but I want to look at something in the 12th chapter of 2 Corinthians, just as an example, okay? Paul mentions the third heaven, and heaven being enlightenment, right? Means awareness and enlightenment. And he talks about being caught up there and not knowing if he's in the body or the spirit. He says that a couple of times. I'm using that as an example to say, can it be that we have, because of our study, because of the dedication, because of the commitment, because of the desire to know and understand truth, that we moved ourselves to a different place, to a different dimension, to a different world, and that world of physicality that the scripture discusses is no longer available to us or no longer real to us?
We have not moved ourselves to a different world because we are in this world, but we are not of it. And our purpose for being in this world is to bring humanity to its senses so it can see that it is spiritual and not material. As far as the scriptures or religion are concerned, we have moved beyond that, yes. There is not that, if you are comfortable with religion, you cannot be comfortable with spirituality. We have not gotten to that place where we are on a consistent basis, caught up to the extent that we don't know whether we are in the body or outside of the body. We have not gotten to that place yet on a consistent basis. There are experiences with that, yes, but a continuous experience with that is my desire, and I certainly believe is yours. And when I say yours, I'm not just talking about Ron, I'm talking about everyone. Does that help, Ron?
Yes, sir.
We cannot desire to leave this world if we are here to restore it. We, as uncomfortable as it may be, we have to be in this world. But not only that, we have to stay in this dimension. If there is a movement dimensionally or a movement to another dimension, then everyone goes. Because if we are who we desire to be, and that is Elohim, bringing light to those who don't know they Elohim, we have to be in the same place with them. And that place of which I speak is this. When I'm talking to people who are steeped in religion, I don't plan it, but my expressions are different. I teach more with questions and then walk them to a place of understanding. When I'm teaching in the space that we are in now is different, because the language that's being spoken here is understood, and those who are not understanding it, they are learning the language. And in learning the language, they're learning how to embrace who they are. The language of religion is no longer effective in our lives. The language of religion cannot be influential in our lives. If we are influenced by the language of religion, then I question your commitment to this journey of spirituality. You cannot live in both places. You cannot serve this material world and spirituality at the same time, because you are going to love one, you're going to have a greater affection for one than you do the other. And that does not work. A decision has to be made. We must position ourselves to be restorers of the breach, because the demise of religion is also the demise of churches. And there are going to be people who are floundering, not knowing which way to go. And it is incumbent upon us not only to treat them with the utmost respect, but to help them move from a place of floundering to a place where they can be still and know that they are God. And that doesn't happen with people who are steeped in religion by you telling them that you God. It doesn't happen that way. It happens by finding out where they are in their thinking, bringing healing to them, and then walking them to a place where their eye is opened to the extent that they can see who they are, as opposed to you saying that you're God, which they take as you saying you're superior to them. That's not necessary. We have a seemingly daunting task at hand, but it's not daunting at all. It's quite easy. It's much easier than carrying the burden of religion. Much easier. The difference is that we have reversed our thinking. When we are teaching, when we are talking like this, we see it as, well, you can do that because you're smart, as an academic thing. No. Religion is academic. Spirituality is not. The concept of religion do not hold water. They can be debunked easily. The concepts of spirituality are truth, and they cannot be shattered in no way whatsoever. And there will always be a bridge between spirituality and religion. And the reason I say that is because the prophet said, Jesus, the prophet said, the poor you will have with you always. He was not talking about poverty. He was talking about poor in spirit, not knowing who you are, being unable to embrace the reality of your essence. And I know your mind goes to the beggar on the streets in Jerusalem. There were beggars, yes. But then you said that there was no poverty in the midst of the kingdom. I did say that, and I still stand by that. However, the reason there were beggars is because Rome and Greece invaded. That's why they were beggars. The gold, the silver, everything was taken away. And by the time that Jesus, the prophet, came into the earth, or the writings became, the words became available to men. By that time, the invasion was rooted in that part of the world, meaning that it had been there for so long until the mindset had begun to change. When I'm talking about no poverty, I'm talking about the kingdom itself. Not during the period that Jesus walked this earth or said to walk this earth. Not during that period. And there is a difference in the two. Questions, comments? I would like to hear from you. And I know you're mulling it over. I'm aware of that. However, if there is something that you don't understand or something that you simply want to mention, feel free to do that.
I have a question. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Audrey.
Mhm.
You said that there's no poverty in the kingdom, but there was during Jesus's time. What do you mean by the kingdom?
When I was talking about the kingdom, I was talking about the kingdom of the Cushite. I'm not talking about the spiritual kingdom.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
see. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
This is Vermel. I have a question, I think. So, when there were poverties in the kingdoms, that poverty was really due to the lack of spirituality?
No, there was no poverty in the kingdom of the Cushites. There was no poverty at all.
Okay. But when we got into Rome and Rome invading, that's where there was a lack of spirituality. Okay.
Lack of spirituality, also a lack of means. There were beggars, in Palestine. There were beggars in Samaria. There were beggars in Canaan. There were beggars in Jerusalem. There were beggars in Galilee, because the Europeans did the same thing that they do when they go everywhere else. They create poverty for the purpose of control. They will elevate men and make sure they have money to elevate them above everyone else, and keep everyone thinking that they can reach that place, that status also, knowing that they're not going to allow it to happen. That's what I'm talking about. And we see the same thing playing out right now. We see the same thing. It is no different. There is nothing new under the sun. It's not new, but it does not mean that we always understand it. Now, I will tell you this. Even though I'm much aware of the nature of the scriptures in terms of being a mystery that must be deciphered, I don't understand all of it yet. But I do get the understanding that I need. And I probably won't understand all of it. And the reason I say probably won't is because the universe has the power, the authority, in my life anyway, because I gave up my free will, to open up anything it chooses in my life. Do I desire to understand that? Of course I do. Of course I do. About 2 weeks ago, I was watching a documentary on Edgar Cayce. And I was asking, after it was over with, of course, I wonder why I can't do that. I would love to be able to do that. And I was reminded of something. The moment my mind went to that place, what came to me was this. I told you, there are those who don't believe unless they see, but you will believe without seeing. What does that mean? I will believe without having to see a picture, or without having to have an experience of or an apparition of something. That's where I am. If the universe desires for that to happen, fine. If it doesn't, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is being stagnant. That I'm not okay with. I'm not okay with being stagnant. Because if we are stagnant, there is no way that we can bring progress to those who have that European mindset. They will not move forward because we are not moving forward. We see what we are supposed to see when we're supposed to see it.
I have a question.
Yes.
What you just described about you being revealed things, is that the same as the scripture says that blessed are those who have not seen who have not seen and believe?
Yes. I didn't think about it in that term, but yes, now that you mentioned it, absolutely. And keep in mind, go ahead, Evan.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Keep in mind that the reason I talk about me, I don't know about you. I don't know how you got to where you are in terms of your experiences that led you to that place. But I know what my experiences were and are. So I'm not in any way making any effort to put myself above anybody, because I am a servant. I am the bottom of the totem pole. I don't mind being the bottom of the totem pole carrying the burden of humanity. It doesn't bother me.
You know,
Go ahead.
this conversation, discussion rather, about poverty really kind of sums up when we spoke in Genesis about leave your father's country and I will make you a nation. Abraham represents
I can see that.
everybody had what they needed. Him sitting in the door of his tent represents anything that is needed from anyone at any time. I am available. I am a servant to you and you are a servant to me, was the mindset. And you see that mindset with most indigenous people that I'm aware of anyway. Even though you may have had tribes that were different from other tribes or set themselves apart, they shared everything, including the land, including the food on the land, the forest, everything was shared. And, you know, you creating poverty, I see that now so clearly. So you set up those boundaries, you set up walls, and it works by not only creating a country, but a country within a country. Because I make sure that if I see this man with money and wealth, that becomes my goal to try to get there. Or I see the separation and it makes me feel not only less than, that becomes my aspiration and not God. And so just that, it just took my mind back to that place when we had that discussion as well. It kind of ties into seeing poverty in that way.
Thank you. When you said, Abraham, leave in the country, and I will make your nation. That message from the universe about Abraham is the message to us. When you decide to leave the boundaries that has you hemmed in, that limits you, then I will make you a nation. A nation doesn't have boundaries. A nation makes sure that everything and everyone is taken care of. A nation is not greedy. A nation it does not seek to take anything from anyone. A country does. What's going on, the idea of countries was understood long before Europeans started invading different parts of the world. That concept of country speaks to boundaries. It speaks to consciousness. The nation frees you. The nations, I see it as being fluid, always flowing. It cannot be contained because it's always expanding beyond what you think the boundaries are. Those are the kinds of things that I see when I look at the scriptures now. I'm beginning to see with a greater clarity the reality that we have missed for so long. I'm beginning to see that like never before. And that reality is what I have been talking about from the onset. That reality is something that we will continue to talk about because words have power. Words allow us to become one with the universe, meaning that the words that we speak when we are in rhythm with the universe, we see results, we experience results. Because we are in rhythm with the universe and not making any efforts to be on anybody's marquee, not making any efforts to be patted on the back for what we do. This is not about superiority and understanding. This is about being a servant in all things. I cannot emphasize that enough. We are a servant in all things. The European mindset is supreme in all things in his own mind, superior in all things in his own mind. Superiority doesn't mean that just because you're at the top, it doesn't mean that you are. Oh God, what was I saying? That you're superior just because you're at the top. It doesn't mean you're superior. Just because you own stuff, it doesn't give you any, doesn't make you superior, even though you have a superiority complex. And that's why it's called a superiority complex, because that's an illness. That's a spiritual illness. White nationalism is an illness. It's a type of mental illness that needs to be healed. The European mindset is an illness that needs healing. And we are the Imhoteps of the earth. We bring healing to anything, whether it's your body or your mind. We are the healers of the mindset of humanity. We are the energy that permeates the atmosphere and help men to see you will never be at peace within or without until your mind is transformed. When your mind is transformed, your actions will follow. And we've talked about earlier the transformation of the mind. So I won't go back into that again. But that is necessary, the transformation of the mind.
I have a question, Pastor Jay.
Go ahead.
So we're the balm of Gilead. We're the balm that heals mankind's mind, their thoughts, their concepts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're the one that heals the nations.
Yes. And I want to say this, that word in Gideon, the balm in Gideon is B-A-L-M, not B-O-M-B. It's B-A-L-M, right?
The balm, yes.
Yes, that's something to rub on. We are healers of the breach. That's who we are. We are the bridge that stands in the gap. That's who we are. And we do get trampled on, but that's okay. Because there's no power on earth that can defeat anything that's guided by the universe. There's no insult that can shatter your heart, because you know that the insults that are hurled at you come from a reprobate mind, come from a child's mind. They don't know any better. They are children who are trying to make sense out of nothing. And we must bring them to a state of maturity, just like we have been brought to a state of maturity. Because there was a time when all of us had a European mindset. But we have moved as far away from that as possible for us anyway. It doesn't mean that we don't have further to go. We've not arrived. We never arrive. We just keep moving. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor Richard and everybody that's on the call. You know, I just was thinking about when Evelyn mentioned the balm in Gilead. And in that song, one of the stanzas that, you know, really impacted on my spirit when it talks about, you know, the importance of sometimes I feel discouraged and I think that my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revived my soul again. And when you spoke about being a repairer of the breach, you know, my question is, what is, you know, how do we become repairers of the breach? And I think that in our discussions, you know, and in our spiritual evolution, you know, we have looked at scriptures, but to be able to, you know, meditate on them and to understand that there's a lot of words, there's a lot of verses, but as Ron alluded earlier in reference to in the beginning, there's a lot in between verse 1 and 2, but I think the significance is in the beginning, the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. And so as, you know, we continue this journey to be able to look at how do we become repairers of the breach, not from a religious perspective, but from a spiritual. As you said, you know, Pastor, I think we have to go back and revisit, you know, the scriptures in that way, that where is some substance or content that we can refer to. And I guess, you know, again, we're just looking at Isaiah chapter 58, and I'm just trying to sum it all up because in the last couple of weeks, I know you've been speaking about the repair of the breach, but how do we manifest that in terms of us looking at it now from the spiritual teachings and not so much in terms of the religious teachings? So that was just my thoughts that I just wanted to share, but a lot of, you know, revelation, you know, that has been said, you know, today, and I think just trying to prioritize it in a way that we can appreciate who we truly are. So I just wanted to share those thoughts about being a repairer of the breach and staying on that mindset of how we develop that. I'm done, if that resonates, being a repairer of the breach. How do we
Thank
do
you.
that?
We repair the breach by doing exactly what we are doing now. There is something that tore humanity apart, and that something is greed. That something is hatred. And that gap, that breach that separates us in our minds, we repair it by understanding that the transformation of the mindset, the transformation of the mindset is what repairs the breach. There is really nothing physically that we must do or can do. Everything is spiritual. So that's what I see, George, in terms of our us being able to repair the breach in the way that we do it. Is there anyone else want to add anything to that or raise a question to that? But first, George, does that help?
Absolutely, it does.
Thank you.
What has helped me, was reading Isaiah 58 verses 11 through 12. That really helped my spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What does 11 and 12 say?
It says, and the Lord will continually guide you and satisfy your desire in scorched places and give strength to your bones, and you will be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters does not fail. And those from among you will rebuild the ancient ruins. You will raise up the age-old foundations, and you will be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the streets in which to dwell.
Thank you. Thank you. Repairs of the breach. What we are doing is raising up. We're building the cities of antiquity. That's what we're doing. We are putting in the macro the necessary tools to build a foundation of truth so that we can help others to open their eye and embrace who they really are. And we do that as we speak that, rather, and we are speaking truth. When they embrace truth, they are in rhythm with the universe, and that in itself opens the eye. Don't be shocked. If you see people who are listening for the first time and they understand everything and more of what we are teaching and been teaching and talking about, don't be shocked. Why? Because just because you came at the end of the day doesn't mean that you don't get the same thing that those who came at the beginning of the day get. It's available to all of us. And yes, those who seek to bring balance to humanity, it is hard in the beginning. It's like tilling a field with a hoe as opposed to a tractor. It's hard. And then those come in the and they have a mule. And then those come at the end, they have a tractor. But they get the same yield that we get who started out with a hoe. I hope that makes sense to you. Evelyn?
Yes, sir. So haven't we come at the end of the day as well? Because we're gleaming from what people have put out in the macro before us, right?
No, we didn't come at the end of the day, baby. We did not come at the end of the day. If we had come at the end of the day, this would not be difficult. This journey, we embarked upon this journey, so many years ago, I don't even remember, maybe 20, 30 years ago. We embarked on this journey and we have suffered as a result of striving to understand the scriptures. We were excommunicated from the association. We were looked down upon. We were called a cult. Both Gaffney and Columbia were deemed a cult. All kinds of things were hurled at us, but we kept moving. It was difficult because there was so much in us that needed to be uprooted. Because we were the teachers in religion. We embraced it. Even though we had questions about it, some of it did not make sense, but we still embraced it. And that had to be dug up. We had to regurgitate all of that before we would have the space to embrace the spirituality, the spiritual essence of what we have learned and are in the process of learning. Does that make sense, Evan?
It does, but I was looking at it as a whole, because someone else had to lay the foundation as well before us. And that's the way I was looking at it. Wasn't looking at it as just a faith ministry, but like with our ancestors, and people who were in slavery, I was just looking at it in that way, not just us
Okay,
as coming at the end of the day.
okay, I see.
That's the way I was looking at it. Okay.
There is no record of anyone having done what we are doing. I've never seen it. There's no record of it. If any one of you have found a record of it through your research, please let me know. But I have not seen a record of it. And there are those who are listening to this and like, who do you think you are? You're arrogant. Those terms does not bother me anymore. Once they did, it doesn't matter. The bits and pieces that were left in us from beginning is what allows us to be able to decipher what we've been doing, and now allowing us to truly see the mysteries and deciphering the mysteries. I have never seen a record of anyone doing what we do. That's why I said that, Evan.
I think from a spiritual perspective, both of those things can be true. If we believe that we are the ancestors and ancestors are, if we believe there's really only one ancestor, excuse me, what we're saying is there is no such thing as time. There is one truth, and we are it. Someone's knocking at my door, so I'm going to leave you right now. Hold on.
Okay. And I'll pick up right there where you are with the ancestors.
Well, and then may I make a comment while you're waiting?
Go ahead.
You said don't be surprised, or something to that effect, when people are able to, once they hear the kinds of spiritual words that we're speaking, and they accept and embrace it, don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be more grateful. I think I would be more grateful, because that's what I feel when I see stuff on the news now based on what we've seeded the universe with, that people are capturing and grasping hold of these ideas and concepts of humanity and the human race, rather than the things that divide us. So what I feel is so much gratefulness to be a part of that. Thanks.
Thank you. What I'm saying in reference to the ancestors never did what we are doing. They didn't have a reason to. The ancestors did not experience what we have experienced. The ancestors were not inundated with religion. The ancestors followed religion, saw that it was wrong, but to open up the mysteries of the scriptures and deal with racism, they never did that. They did not do that. The majority of our ancestors never experienced racism. Racism was not experienced until the invasion of Africa. And there's no one that I know of who have sought to open up this chest, or open up this container of the scriptures that shows us that they are spiritual mysteries. We've been told they are mysteries, but nobody's opening it up. That's why it is so difficult for us to grasp what we are talking about. Look how long it took us to grasp that we are Elohim. did the ancestors know they were God? Of course they did. Of course they did. But to eradicate racism from the earth? No. To have a desire to do that? No. They did not do what we are doing in reference to recognizing that the system of religion and the system of politics are the same. And the mindset of the European is what brought religion and the system that controls the world into existence. And we are in the process of dismantling those systems. We are in the process of dismantling the systemic racism that all of us have experienced and are experiencing. So that's the genesis. I'm sorry, that's the foundation of my saying that no one has done what we have done because of them having not experienced what we have experienced and then moved to this place as a result of those experiences. Does that make sense? Ron, Evelyn?
Well, it does, but what about things that have not been recorded? I don't think that I don't believe that a lot of things have been written in the stone or on paper, but just done, and it has not been recorded.
That's
Okay.
not my point.
Help me understand. Help me
Okay.
understand, please.
None of the ancestors, none of them suffered what we suffered in slavery. None of them. None of the ancestors ever lived in a society that we live in, a society that has convinced us that we are wealthy and can be more and can acquire more wealth. A society that pushes religion and going to heaven while they are killing us. Our ancestors never lived in a society anything like this. And as a result of not having lived in this type of society before, they had no reason to do what we are doing. When ancestors were enslaved, they fought to be free from slavery. And the freedom from slavery that was given to us was not freedom at all. And when we were separate but unequal, we had our own businesses, our own churches, but racism still controlled us. Racism was still woven into the fabric. Our ancestors has never had to deal with, had to endure what we have endured. The DNA of slavery is still in us. Our ancestors didn't have to deal with that. I listen to African after African from Kabbalah say, we did not know that Black folk were in America. They've not dealt with this before. And the ones who are under the oppression of religion in Africa, they're not seeing what we see. The complicated systemic racism has never existed the way it exists now. So they did not have a reason to do what we are doing. They did not have to search for the mysteries. If you talk about in the beginning of spirituality, they didn't have to search for the mysteries. They were the mysteries.
Okay.
You got me?
Oh yeah, go ahead and finish. But yeah, I was thinking out loud. Okay, I got it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
They use their understanding, their unicity with the universe to do magnificent things. No, we are not able to build a pyramid because we don't know how they did it. And guess what? They are helping us. They're guiding us. Yes. Yes, they give us the strength, the energy to do what we do, but they did not have to do it. That's all I'm saying. I'm done. Ron?
So I have a question. So are you saying that they knew they were God.
Yes, in the beginning, yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. That's what I see.
There is no way that ancestors would have been able to map the universe if they did not know that. No way. How did the Dogons do what they did? They knew who they were. They understood. When it talks about the God, the Valley of the Gods, these people, our people knew who they were. And when you look at the time of the existence of the earth, it's a small period of time that we lost sight of who we are because of the invasion, but more importantly, because of slavery.
Okay, and one more thing, Pastor Jaden.
Let me
I'm
finish.
sorry. Okay.
We are a Trojan horse in the midst of a country, a country that does not care anything about us. And we are in the process of dismantling that country. Go ahead, Evan.
So is that why they did not pray? They meditated. They thought things into existence. Yeah, that's what I see.
Okay.
Because they knew who they were.
Yes, but I don't know how they brought those things into existence. I know they knew who they were. And you brought up an excellent point. None of us knew anything about praying audibly until religion was created or brought into existence. None of us. Ron? Evelyn, does that help?
Thank you. I got so much clarity on that. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Ron?
Yes, sir. Any questions or comments? Maybe this is a good place to take a pause. Anyone? Okay, good discussion. Stay warm out there and be careful.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, everyone. Look forward till tomorrow morning. Have a great day, rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Here, family.